in just a few minutes, you'll be able to add your shooting mechanic to your top-down action game in Godot. Let's get into it. Okay, first thing we want to do is make a new scene. So let's add a new scene from an area 2D. Now, this is going to need a collision shape, so let's quickly add one of those. And also we're going to add in a sprite 2D for our bullet to appear. Let's drag in our bullet texture. It's just a very basic circle that I drew in a sprite. Now for the collision shape, we'll do a circle and scale it up to match our sprite. Okay, let's save this as bullets. Okay, now I need to add a script. First thing we're going to want to do in this one is get a few variables declared. So first variable we need is speed. Make this a float. Let's make it equal to 500. Let's say a damage variable is something we can control as well. So say we get upgrades later, we can increase the amount of damage that a bullet will do. Let's start it at 5. Then next we'll get the direction. So make that a vector 2. This will be the direction that the bullet will travel. Now when the bullet is spawned, it needs to be initialized. So let's just make a quick function here to control all that logic. So when this function is called, a parent will call it and pass itself through. So then we can set its global position to be equal to the parent's global position. We'll also get the global rotation of our parent as well and set that to bullet's global rotation. Now the direction the bullet's going to travel in, that's going to be equal to a vector 2. We're going to go right. So if you look over this, it's going to be a vector with 1 and a 0. It represents the right direction, which is the default direction that our objects, our nodes face. And then we're going to rotate this by the rotation of that we just set. So the global rotation we just set. So we're going to set that to rotation. There we go. So we can get the parent. Then we're going to add a child of this bullet. Now that being said, we need to change a setting here. So go to bullet, and you go to visibility, go to top level. This needs to be true. So what this does, it will not inherit its transform from its parent. So this means that if the player moves left, then the bullet won't move left with it. It'll continue in a straight line. Next, we need to declare the physics process function. So every tick this will be called. So the position will be equal to the direction times by our speed times by delta, as it's being called every tick. Delta will be the time in between frames. We also need to add one more function here. What we might actually do is connect it to a signal. So from here, select that area 2D. At the top here, we'll select node and body entered. So we hover over this. We can see this will emit when a body enters this area. So whenever an enemy or anything enters this area, this will trigger. So let's double click that, hit connect, and now we have a signal that's now connected to this function. So in this, what we're going to do is check if the body, so the body that enters, we're going to check if the body has the method add HP. So say they had an HP variable, they might want to change it. So we can go variable add underscore HP. And let's go the minus of the damage value. And then after that, we'll delete. Okay, so that's the code for the bullet done for now. We also want to make sure that we're on the right collision layer. So the collision layer, this is very important because right now we will detect the player, and then we'll detect the player, and then we'll delete. So I don't think this bullet needs to detect the player for our game because there's no enemies that has ranged attacks. So what we'll do is we'll change it to the second layer. So what does this mean? This is the physics layer which the object lives on. Now the mask is what physics layers this object can detect. So this area 2D will detect any objects living on layer 2, so not the player, and also it'll live on layer 2 as the player doesn't need to run into the bullet. Hit save on that one. Okay, heading back over to the player script now, what we're going to do is we're going to code in some functionality so we can spawn and shoot these bullets we just created. First thing we're going to do, I'm going to add a constant. It's going to be our bullet class. So this is preloading the bullet scene we just created. Then we're going to call this with a function. Let's call it shoot. From there, we're going to create a variable called new bullet. And that's going to be the bullet class we just created. And we're going to instantiate it. So we've got a new instance. And of this new bullet, I am going to call initialize. Now we need to pass a parent. So what I'm going to do is actually make a reference point for this bullet. So go into the collision shape. I'm going to make a child for that one. Call it mark 2D. Now this is going to be the location where the bullet spawns from. So say, for example, it could be a gun. So I'm going to rename it as gun. And let's go access a unique name. So back to the scripts. We'll pass it in here now. Now, we've got the shoot function set up. What we need to do now is actually call that somehow. So what we're going to do is create a new input. So go project, project settings, input map, add a new action, call it shoot, add, and I'm going to add a left mouse button for the input there. Now what we can do, or function input. This is an inbuilt function within Godot, and it's going to pass an event. So an event will trigger each time there's an input. So we're going to check this event if it is the action just pressed of shoot. And when that does happen, we're going to call shoot. So again, what we've done here is we've made it every time we left click, which is called shoot. We're going to create a new bullet, which will initialize a new bullet scene, which we loaded up here. And then from there, on that new bullet, we'll initialize it with our gun as the parent. What that will do, that'll pass the parent through and set the position and rotation to match. And then the bullet will shoot in a direction until it hits something that has the method add HP. And then we'll add the HP, which is going to be negative in this case because it's negative damage. And then it'll delete itself. So the next step's going to be to go to the enemy class here. What we're going to have to do is add some HP. What we're going to do first is go add a variable. We'll call this one max HP. Make sure we set the type so it's a bit faster in the code execution for Godot. Let's make this a float of 10. Then a new variable current HP. Let's make it a float. Let's actually make this equal to max HP. But we'll have to call this onReady. So let's go at the start here at onReady. So current HP, when the game starts, the current HP will equal max HP. Now let's add a function for adding the HP. So we can use this for any other, like if there's a health pack or something, or the enemies can heal in some way, this function we can reuse. So what we're going to do is current HP going to be plus or equals to the amount, the parameter amount that we pass through. Now we'll check in here as well. Every time we change it, we'll check if current HP is less or equal to 0. If that is the case, we're going to delete it just by calling Q free. If you'd like to, for extra polish later on, you could add animations for death or any other events, any score increases or loot drops. You could all code that in here. Or you could do that in a separate function and then call the function here. Also, what we want to do here is make sure that our enemy can detect our bullets, so put them on the second layer as well. So make sure our layers line up. So the bullet is on layer 2, so it does not interact with the player at all because the player is on layer 1. The enemies, they're going to be on layer 1 and 2. They can interact with the player and the bullet. Hit save. Now if we run this. Alright guys, so that's how you add a shooting mechanic to your top-down 2D shooter in Godot. I think the next step would be to make health bars for these characters. So the next video we're going to explore that there. Alright, thanks, see you there. Bye.